My sisters, with a sense of entitlement, insisted that I allow them to rent out my vacation home for their own financial gain. When I declined, this tale was shared on my channel several months back, but there have been recent developments that could pique your interest. The timestamp will be included in the description, allowing you to bypass the earlier sections. My sisters, with a sense of entitlement, insisted that I allow them to rent out my vacation home for their own profit. Upon my refusal, their husbands forcibly entered, and they are currently confronting legal charges. Occurred today. My parents chose to throw a barbecue, as it seems to be a common pastime for those of their generation. I turned down the invitation because I have a strong aversion to my two sisters, their husbands, and their children. My wife and I have chosen to remain child-free. The mother subsequently exerted pressure on the wife. In summary, we went. When we finally arrived, approximately 20 individuals had already gathered. My sisters and their partners were already quite tipsy. Intoxicated. Indeed, my mom dedicated all her time to managing the energetic chaos of her nieces and nephews, who were between the ages of 7 and 11. My dad had cleverly positioned himself in the whirlpool section of the pool, accompanied by a small cooler brimming with beers. My wife and I engaged in light conversation with a variety of individuals, enjoyed some food, and savored a frozen margarita. Sisters and Bills alternated in their critiques, pointing fingers at our tardiness, our lack of swimsuits, and our apparent disruption of the atmosphere. Indifferent. A quintessential summer gathering in the suburbs. Approximately 45 minutes into the gathering, two of the children dashed towards one of the guests from the neighborhood who was standing beside the pool and playfully pushed her in. She stood at the pool steps, tripped but managed to keep her balance, resulting in only getting half wet. She was undeniably displeased, yet she refrained from causing a disturbance. Instead, she approached the parents, took their towels, dried herself, and departed quietly. Sisters and Bills found it to be quite the delightful amusement. Not long after, I found myself a few feet from the pool, engaged in conversation with someone. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of 3 kids sprinting towards me with all their might. Clearly, it was my turn next. It's not particularly challenging to outsmart young children, but I simply sidestepped at the last moment. They dashed toward the pool, their feet pounding against the ground, and leapt in with unrestrained enthusiasm. Most of the other guests, including my wife and me, began to laugh, but their mothers, who were quite inebriated, completely lost it. It seems that 2 of the children were unable to swim, despite being dressed in swimsuits. As I stood by the pool, lacking the appropriate swim attire, I chose to step back and allow others to assist in retrieving the children. The children were wailing as if they had suffered a great loss. At that moment, chaos erupted. The 4 inebriated parents were shouting at everyone around, but their focus was particularly on me for almost allowing their children to drown. They were also upset because 2 of the kids had been recording the stunt with their parents' iPhones, which now lay at the bottom of the pool. One of my Bills ventured into the pool in an attempt to retrieve the phones, but his BMI and BAC rendered that effort futile. No one else stepped up to assist, which was to be expected since my sisters were still complaining to everyone. I informed my sisters that it was their duty to supervise their children, and that should anything occur, the responsibility would rest with them, not with me. Both sides exchanged some quite powerful words. My wife and I departed after the other individual toppled over and landed face first while shouting at us. Now they're suggesting I should have allowed those little brats to push me into the pool, enjoy themselves, and destroy my phone. Therefore, is that you, Willow? As a brief aside, father, naturally, remained ensnared in the whirlpool. Insightful observations. Reflections on OOP. I understand they are merely children enjoying themselves. Their belief that this was acceptable speaks volumes about the influence of their upbringing rather than their own judgment. I simply wish we hadn't gone. While it's pleasant to catch up with my parents and their neighbors, I must admit that I have a strong aversion to my sisters and their spouses. Their envy is palpable, and their presence can be utterly draining. Further exploration of why OOP seems indifferent to certain members of his family. It's more like a clash of opposites. I've always felt a distance from my sisters, who are 8 and 10 years my senior. Additionally, I find that I don't share many interests with their husbands. They seem fine, but I really don't care about what matters to them. and they likely feel the same way about me. The four of them seem to harbor a certain envy towards our way of living. The sisters both embrace the role of stay-at-home mothers. Both husbands earn a substantial income, with one noticeably surpassing my own. However, my wife and I both have professional careers. We are child-free, and we manage our finances with greater responsibility. Consequently, we have significantly increased our investments, and we no longer have to navigate vehicles cluttered with children's belongings. Instead, we enjoy pleasant trips once or twice a year. It certainly irritates both sisters and, by extension, their husbands. We consistently encounter some trivial behavior from them. Ultimately, both my wife and I find little pleasure in their company, which is the reason I wish to avoid the gathering. It simply holds no value for me. However, my wife tends to be an optimistic individual and often greets them with joy. Perhaps next time your wife will feel more at ease about attending. That might just be the sole silver lining in this situation. My wife has always been more tolerant and forgiving towards my siblings than I am. But from what she mentioned on the way home, it seems she's reached her limit with them too. Your father seems remarkable. Absolutely. My dad has a really laid-back vibe. He thrives in the company of others, has a background in sales, appreciates seeing people have a good time, and is truly savoring life in retirement. He, along with two companions, simply sat back and observed the performance. Mom is great as well, but the situation really bothered her. Are the kids doing all right? The children are doing well. When I departed, they were indoors enjoying some television. I believe the numbers are 7, 9, 10, 10, and 11. The trio in the center engaged in a reckless game with me. I suspect the 11-year-old was the one encouraging them. She typically takes the lead in these situations. The way you described your parents hosting a barbecue was a bit unusual. I needed to condense the post to comply with the character limit. My family is sociable and enjoys hosting gatherings. Their home embodies the quintessential charm for hosting gatherings, and they constantly find new excuses to bring everyone together. They had envisioned a gathering for the 4th of July, but with one of my sisters and her family away on vacation. It turned into a makeshift celebration. The scene was adorned with flags, red, white, and blue decorations, barbecue, and even a margarita machine, capturing the spirit of the whole willowy in a unique way. The children were promised sparklers. Only my nieces and nephews were present. As the neighbors are all older, much like my parents, OOP is deemed not at fault. Post update. August 17, 2023. Nearly 1 month has passed. To start, my parents inform me that my nieces and nephews excel in swimming and frequently enjoy the pool. The 7-year-old, though still a novice, has a deep affection for the water. My sister just mentioned that they couldn't swim, implying it would reflect poorly on me. To be fair, none of the children are permitted in the deep end, which is precisely where they ended up falling in. The two 10-year-olds and the 9-year-old conspired to shove me into the pool. After we departed, the party concluded on a rather unpleasant note. My inebriated brother-in-law, who took a tumble while shouting at me, ended up needing to visit urgent care to have his face stitched up. He was too inebriated to drive, so Dad stepped in to take him home. Dad was quite displeased about this. Later that evening, my sisters initiated a group text and shared some truly hurtful remarks. Their spouses contributed a few remarks too. My wife and I decided to block the four of them. My mom called me, clearly upset about what was said. She and Dad were in the chat, and I can't say I blame her. Due to the messages my parents emphasized, my sisters and Bills were asked to come over the following day, Sunday, without their children, to clarify a few matters and establish some guidelines. As my mom put it, the outcome was a remorseful yet lackluster apology from the siblings through my mom's phone. I'm thankful my wife was by my side when they called. Her intense gazes prevented me from expressing my true thoughts. I simply expressed my gratitude and conveyed that we saw no reason to delve into it any deeper. I believed everything was resolved, so I decided to unblock them. That evening, I received a message from one of the Bills informing me that the phones were priced at $4 and inquiring about when I would be settling the payment. What on earth? I responded with a firm no, capturing a screenshot of his message and sending it to my family along with a note declaring that we were finished with this nonsense. We decided to cut ties with our sisters and their spouses. requesting that we not be invited to any future Whole Willowies or gatherings if they would be attending. Subsequently, I once more severed ties with the sisters and their partners. At that moment, everything truly spiraled out of control. Dad called them out and gave them a piece of his mind. He informed them, among other things, that the grandkids were not welcome at his place for the foreseeable future. Since my mom often offers complimentary babysitting, it left them quite unsettled. He prohibited them from using the vacation house and informed them that my wife and I are the actual owners. Not he and Mom. This totally unsettled both of my sisters, as their families frequently utilize the place, often inviting friends for weekend getaways. This behavior was quite unusual for my parents. It was evident that they were at their limit. For clarity, I never intended for my sisters to find out that we owned the place. We purchased it for my parents. They had always dreamed of having a home in the mountains. Maintaining the secrecy of the ownership was merely a strategy to sidestep any potential conflict with my siblings. A few days later, my sisters and their husbands arrived at our home unexpectedly to offer their apologies in person. We were out to dinner when they left a note. One sister reached out to me at work as well, but I directed her to voicemail. We have concluded that maintaining no contact is the most beneficial choice for the foreseeable future. And we have not engaged with them for over 3 weeks now. Honestly, I've reached my limit. They can take a hike. Insightful observations, reflections on the journey of existence. Though it's only been a short time, I must admit that cutting them off has truly brought a sense of tranquility to our lives. I was unaware of the extent of the continuous, subtle turmoil they generate. They aren't harmful individuals, rather, they come across as exhausting and trivial. I have no personal interest in their use of the weekend spot. Technically, it belongs to us, but we purchased it for my parents. They have control over it and determine who can use it when they aren't. We handle all the operating costs and taxes. One positive aspect of this situation is that we now have clarity on how we will manage the property as my parents age. I had every intention of stepping in to manage it, organizing weekends, keeping it up, and so forth. However, it seems we've decided to sell it instead. And if we feel like heading to the mountains, we can simply rent an Airbnb. Oh dear. Parents. Indeed, my parents are quite astute. They have a relaxed attitude, embracing a philosophy of live and let live. I believe they will relax their stance on this matter in the near future. But ultimately, that choice lies with them. We will not be participating in any family gatherings for the time being. It's unfortunate for my sisters that they might be anxious about me preventing them from using the cabin. I won't do that. It's really up to Mom and Dad until they're older. It brings closure to one of the sisters' dreams of creating a compound of homes upon inheriting the property. A notion I've been aware of for a while yet chose to overlook. This particular piece of property stands out as it offers a significantly larger area for development. Unlike the typical lots in the vicinity that usually feature just one buildable section. Especially since it is located at the end of a road, there is potential for at least 3 houses with stunning views to be developed on that land. They aren't truly remorseful, they merely seek to gain something from you. I wholeheartedly concur, their apologies lack sincerity. I have no intention of engaging with them in the near future. The decision about using the vacation home ultimately rests with my parents. Indeed, I hold ownership and manage all the costs. Yet I acquired it for their benefit and entrusted them with daily oversight. They are wonderful individuals who have always dreamed of having a retreat for their family. Yet it seems impossible for them to have acquired it on their own. I was able to purchase it for them due to my financial good fortune, diligent saving, and investing, along with a substantial bonus I received the year I sold my home and relocated with my wife. I'm indifferent to whether my family allows my siblings to use the house. But I must confess I take some pleasure in my sister's unease upon discovering that I have the means to purchase the property and permit my parents to use it. All without ever bringing it up to them. Dad updated the lock code during their visit last week. So now it's just him, Mom, my wife, and me who have access. Concerning Mom's babysitting duties, she informs me that once a week, she and occasionally Dad visit each sister's home to spend the day with the kids. Once school begins, she plans to collect each child from school once a week on different days and bring them home to enjoy the evening together. She mentions that the 5 of them together cause her stress. But when they're apart, Everything is fine. My parents have expressed that they don't intend to invite my sisters and their families over anytime soon, relishing the peace and quiet they currently have. It seems to me that they had grown weary of the previous dynamic and utilized the pool party antics as a pretext to alter the relationships. A light-hearted observation on the reason the Oops post was taken down from Willow. The message I just read from the moderator of the other subreddit indicated that the violence involved property damage. I still don't understand. Perhaps the absurd. Revisiting the previous update. As of August 26, 2023, just 9 days have passed since the last post. Indeed, the past few days have been quite intriguing. I believed things had reached a breaking point before, but it now feels more like a mere whisper compared to the chaos of this week. To clarify this, I must offer some financial background. My parents have never excelled at saving money, having done their taxes for years. I possess a comprehensive understanding of their financial situation. They own their home outright and carry little debt. Yet their retirement savings are lacking. They both receive Social Security, and Dad enjoys a reliable pension. They have some savings, but there's no hidden treasure waiting in the basement. After they retired, I purchased their current car as a thoughtful gift, allowing them to enjoy something nice to drive. It marked the first time in nearly 2 decades that they owned a car instead of leasing one. My sisters firmly believe that our parents are wealthy and that they will inherit everything, as I supposedly don't require any additional funds. Consequently, they've shown little interest in saving for themselves. It appears that my eldest sister and her spouse, who have 3 children, have been living beyond their financial capacity for a while and are now facing monetary difficulties. They've reached the limit on their credit cards and are falling behind on their car leases. With one vehicle on the verge of repossession, he had boasted previously about earning by per year, but it appears the reality is closer to half that amount. On Tuesday, she revealed everything to her mom, driven by the need for a loan. This was a shocking revelation for both her mom and dad. For the past 3 years, instead of using the vacation house as intended, she had been renting it out monthly, pocketing the earnings. We're talking about $2,000 or more for a weekend and at least $4,000 for a week. Due to her being cut off from using the space, she has had to cancel one group already. She is now filled with anxiety about the possibility of losing everything. My parents are not in a position to provide them with a loan. My other sister knew about her renting out the place, but naturally, she has never mentioned it. I have a feeling she might have done something similar. I remember going up there once to drop off an ATV I had worked on, and I encountered a family who said they were staying there with my sister and her family, mentioning that they had gone to town for something. When I decided to let it go, I assumed she had lent the house to a few friends. Yet, I have often pondered. I learned all of this from my parents, who are quite anxious about the situation. My mom more so than my dad, who seems mostly just frustrated by it all. I understand that my father feels a sense of betrayal. It seems he must feel a sense of shame for being unable to support his daughter. He emphasized that, as long as he has a say in the matter, the girls will not be using the vacation home in the near future. My parents informed me about the situation, anticipating that my sisters would soon come at me with full force. Indeed, they were correct. On Thursday, my sisters arrived at our place once more, this time without their husbands, and patiently waited outside the door until I returned home. I faced a dilemma: engage in a public confrontation, risk them causing a scene if I entered alone, or allow them in. Ultimately, I chose to let them in. I received a dubious tale from the older sister, with the younger one supporting her, about why I should allow them to use the mountain place again right away. They mentioned that I've been a poor brother and that I should take responsibility by planning to contribute to their children's college tuition, as that's what family is expected to do. I allowed them to present their narrative, then challenged them based on the insights my family had shared with me. Everything unraveled from that point onward. Emotions ran high: denial, tears, curses, shouts, everything you could imagine unfolded. My ears are still ringing. Even 2 days later, I won't deny it, I expressed some harsh and unkind words to them, but they were all rooted in truth. After about an hour, they finally departed. Following that, I enjoyed a refreshing shower and then settled down to rest. Upon waking, I found my wife at home, and her initial words revealed that she had to block additional phone numbers due to my sisters inundating our phones with calls from new numbers. People reached out to me yesterday requesting a call. I'm certain my sisters have shared some distorted version of the events. But I'm not ready to revisit it just yet. I typically exude a lot of energy. But this drama has truly worn me out. Today, I mustered just enough energy to make the drive to the vacation house and secure the entrance gate with a padlock. I possess the sole key. I imagine that should be sufficient to keep my siblings at bay. They would likely struggle to make the trek of 400 yards uphill just to reach the house. Fresh updates from this location. Update 3 post. September 12, 2023. 2.5 weeks since the previous update. Another update on the chaotic situation that is my extended family. I believe it could be the right moment considering the events of the last fortnight. Once my sisters visited, my parents informed me that they were finished overseeing the vacation home. It seemed the sisters had been urging them to allow the use of the place once more. Essentially, my parents entrusted me with the responsibility for the place and made it clear that it was now my issue to handle. Until that point, they had meticulously monitored who would be utilizing it at any given time and had diligently managed routine maintenance, replacing worn-out items and so forth. Ultimately, they concluded that they preferred to steer clear of all this chaos. Although I don't hold any resentment, I feel let down because the place was meant to be a space for them to relish and gather. And they frequent it often. Additionally, I've never been concerned about my sisters and their families using it, as I've always believed that decision was ultimately up to my parents, even though I technically hold ownership. However, my family will find themselves unable to access things without my involvement, which alters the entire atmosphere of the environment. I have implemented multiple measures to ensure the safety of the location. I previously stated that I secured the gate with a robust chain and the highest quality lock available. I performed a complete reset on all the door keypads and generated entirely new codes. Yesterday, security cameras were installed, and I must say, it's quite exciting. The installer persuaded me to opt for a high-rise model that offers a stunning view over the valley. The expense of the system exceeded my expectations. Yet the tranquility it brings is invaluable. Signs were also placed around the property indicating that it was under video surveillance. I installed a robust lockout for the water shutoff and drain valve. I sincerely hope I don't misplace the keys for it, as losing them would make the removal process quite challenging. I haven't shared with anyone except my wife that the water is locked off. And once again, we are the only ones with the keys. Last week, I received individual calls at my office from each of the husbands, both attempting to persuade me to allow them to use the house as they have in the past. The older one had gone out with some friends for a guys' hangout but found himself unable to enter due to the locked gate. He was quite frustrated and humiliated about being locked out. I have no doubt he would have smashed the lock if he had the chance. Throughout the call, he oscillated between being overly assertive and adopting a victim mentality. At one moment, he menaced to tear that gate right out of the damn earth. He also confessed that they had been leasing it to a few friends, that they required the funds, that I was jeopardizing their venture, and that I should reimburse them. Me? No way. I regret not recording the conversation with him, but I'm unsure how to do that from an office phone in the first place. The other bill seemed as though he was compelled to call by my sister. He hardly resisted when I informed him not to consider using the place again. I made it clear to them that they are not permitted to use the place and that they should refrain from asking again. At this juncture, I'm contemplating the sale of the vacation home. My wife and I find that we won't utilize it sufficiently to warrant holding onto it, especially since there aren't any family gatherings on the horizon. I brought up the idea of selling it to my parents, and their reaction was essentially indifferent. I could easily more than double my investment by selling it. The property includes 3 lots with stunning views and is situated at the end of a private road. However, I think I'll hold off on selling for a bit. Making that choice right now would be driven by my emotions. At present, my sisters and I are not in communication, and I have no intentions of reaching out. I'm uncertain about the relationship between them and my parents, and I prefer to remain uninformed. Last week, we enjoyed an evening with my family and dined at a lovely new restaurant. No one mentioned any of this nonsense. Mom shared some news about the nieces and nephews. She's enjoying time with them at their homes. Apologies that this update lacks humor or cleverness. That's simply how life unfolds at times. Revised Entry 4. Dated October 16, 2023. 1 month on, several individuals have inquired about the latest developments. So here it is. I employed someone to oversee and take care of the vacation home. He resides in the vicinity, looks after his family, and oversees a considerable portfolio of properties, including vacation rentals and weekend retreats like ours. He regularly checks the camera feeds and conducts a physical inspection of the premises every week or two. It seems he might hold the most enviable position in the mountains, earning a living while cruising with his dog, exploring the properties, and lounging on the decks of others at his leisure. A camera feed is positioned at a house close to the beginning of the private road, capturing still shots each time a vehicle passes by. $450 each month. And he will handle basic maintenance and repairs at an hourly rate. He has a camaraderie with all of the sheriff's deputies as well. Gained a significant sense of tranquility from this experience. He shares photos from his walks with everyone once or twice a week. I must take a moment to celebrate my parents. I received so much inspiration from them during dinner tonight. My sisters were putting pressure on me to insist that I make the vacation house available to everyone for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving up there had evolved into a cherished tradition for the family. Though for my wife and me, we've only attended once in 7 years. My dad chose not to press the issue because he understood my response would be a firm no. A fantastic plan emerged. They announced their intention to organize the Thanksgiving gathering and proposed that, if everyone contributed to the cost up front, they would secure an Airbnb in the mountains. Alternatively, they could hold Thanksgiving at their home. Or perhaps one of the sisters might take on the responsibility of hosting it. This led to a conflict between the sisters, as the middle sister was eager to pursue the Airbnb venture, while the oldest sister found herself without any funds. The time to finalize the Airbnb has come and gone. It seems Thanksgiving will be spent at my parents' home. In any case, our presence will be absent. My parents have requested that we hold off on selling the place for the time being. They wish to use it occasionally, but only after my sisters have adjusted to the new normal. They might wish for everyone to reunite there in the future. But that simply isn't in the cards. At this stage, I would prefer to sell it and move forward. But I can manage holding onto it if my family finds some use for it every now and then. Moreover, its value will increase significantly in the future. My wife and I have maintained a distance from my sisters and their spouses. Both sisters have reached out from new numbers, expressing their frustration with Google Voice, and left messages urging me to meet with them for the sake of our parents to discuss how everyone can share the family vacation home. My wife received a call as well. I'm pleased that I had already developed the practice of ignoring calls from unfamiliar numbers. I truly can't determine whether they're living in a fantasy or if they believe they can intimidate me into granting them access once more. I'm indifferent. My parents mentioned that the oldest sister and her husband are terminating the leases on their SUV and large truck. And they are selling their jet skis along with some other items they've never really needed. That will be quite challenging for her. She has a tendency to boast and won't appreciate being perceived in something that is older, smaller, or less expensive. My identity is deeply intertwined with his truck. He even sports a small tattoo of the truck company's logo. That is certainly one of the numerous reasons why we never spent time together. A number of individuals have proposed that I transform the vacation home into an Airbnb. I have no intention of doing that, at least not in the near future. I'm aware that it could be profitable, yet it would undoubtedly lead to significant turmoil within the family and create a great deal of stress for my parents. That is unnecessary for them. Removing my family's personal belongings from there would be quite a challenge, as those items have no place to go, and there would be signs of wear and tear on the place. I'm certain it would require a considerable investment of my time. Even with a manager handling the details, it simply doesn't hold value for me. Update post 5, November 27, 2023, 1.5 months later. I drafted the majority of this yesterday but chose to hold off on sharing it until I felt more composed. Patience has proven futile. I'm still on edge. I apologize if this seems a bit disjointed. There's been a lot going on, making it challenging to express my thoughts clearly. Everything has spiraled out of control. I honestly never expected anything like this to occur. In brief, my brothers-in-law unlawfully entered my vacation home and were subsequently taken into custody. Charges have been filed for breaking and entering, destruction of property, and communicating threats. each classified as Class 1 misdemeanors. I have chosen not to withdraw the charges. I may consider it if I receive full compensation for the damage they inflicted. As of Saturday evening, they remained in jail. I presume they have been released by now. I believed that everything had calmed down. I haven't had any contact with my sisters for more than 6 weeks now. My parents spent a week at the house and enjoyed themselves thoroughly. Tyler, the property manager I hired, has been fantastic. He has completed a few repairs I requested, and I've provided him with a list of tasks he will be addressing. He typically shares a photo or two of wildlife or a sunset with his clients each week, which really makes me want to get up there. On the Fr Willowy following Thanksgiving, my bills were sent to my vacation home. An angle grinder was employed to sever the chain on the driveway gate, resulting in damage to the gate itself during the operation. They attempted to force their way in through the front door, damaging the lock set and leaving deep gouges in the wood. They successfully accessed the utility floor door and managed to unlock the internal door. They managed to break into the barn, though I'm uncertain about the reason behind it. As they stepped out through the front door, they encountered sheriff's deputies along with Tyler waiting for them. Tyler received alerts from the camera system indicating activity, prompting him to observe the situation and contact the sheriff's department. Tyler noted that the Bills attempted to weasel their way out of the situation, but the deputies weren't fooled. Entering an unoccupied home is quite a grave matter in that area, typically. It's individuals involved with drugs who loot the property and sell off its contents. When the Bills were apprehended, they completely lost it, threatening to unleash their fury on me. Among other things, it's unwise to act that way in the presence of law enforcement. Tyler and the sheriff's office attempted to reach out to my wife and me to discuss our preferences, but we were enjoying a day with her parents and had left our phones in the car to fully embrace our time off. They went ahead and booked the Bills on everything, just as I would have requested them to do. Bills reached out to their wives from jail, and understandably, they panicked. They contacted my parents, attempted to reach me, but I was blocked. They sought a lawyer in that rural area to arrange bail, which proved challenging, especially since it was a whole willowy weekend. My older sister is completely broke, and her credit cards are all maxed out, so if they managed to make bail, my middle sister would have been responsible for covering the costs for both husbands. As of Saturday afternoon, I am aware that they remained incarcerated. We refrained from checking our phones until late Fr Willowy while driving home from the in-laws. My phone was flooded with calls and messages from my mom, dad, Tyler, and the sheriff's department. What a way to spoil a wonderful day. I was feeling so uplifted until I glanced at my phone. My wife went through the texts and listened to the messages, reading them aloud to me. And by the time we arrived home, I had a clearer understanding of what was happening. I shifted my mind into a contemplative state, attempted to move beyond my frustration, but fell short. I spoke with Tyler and received a detailed account of the events and the extent of the damage, which only fueled my frustration. On Fr Willowy, I concluded my day by reaching out to the sheriff's department, making it clear that there was no room for misunderstanding. The Bills had no rightful claim to my property, and I expressed my intention to press charges. I haven't returned my parents' call. I hardly got any sleep. I chose to wait until Saturday afternoon to reach out to my parents. Both of them were quite shaken by the whole situation, especially my mom. My sisters had pressured them into saying that I should inform the police it was all a misunderstanding and that I wished for the charges to be dismissed. I outright declined, informing them that there was no chance I would proceed until I had consulted with an attorney and received full payment for the complete cost of rectifying everything. By the time we ended the call, my mom was in tears. And naturally, that left me feeling terrible. My dad proposed that it was time for a fresh beginning, yet he also expressed that he believed they should compensate for the damage. I have yet to visit the property. I feel utterly helpless, and I can already sense the overwhelming frustration I'll experience when I finally confront the damage face to face. The images leave much to be desired. I'm aiming for tomorrow or Wednesday, but my job doesn't allow for casual departures unless it's an emergency. I've reached out to a couple of attorney friends, seeking their recommendations for the right lawyers to pursue my sisters and address the Bills. I'm uncertain about the specific actions I can take, but I'm optimistic about obtaining restraining orders. I possess all the messages they've forwarded to me, which could be beneficial. I am seriously contemplating legal action against them for the profits they earned from renting the property. While the money isn't my primary concern, it would certainly contribute to their discomfort. The gloves have certainly come off at this stage. A few additional remarks. 1. Bills was completely unaware that I had brought someone in to monitor the situation or that cameras had been installed there now. My parents were aware but chose not to share the information, understanding that it would only provide my sisters with a reason to create drama. Signs are posted on the property indicating that it is under camera surveillance and that trespassing is prohibited. 2. My wife has reached her limit at this point. I understand her perspective. She has shown remarkable patience throughout this situation. But she finally hit her breaking point and made her feelings clear. She mentioned that the decision on how to handle this rests with me. But she believed they all required a stern lesson. 3. The older Bill is unlikely to encounter any consequences at his workplace due to this situation. Whereas the middle Bill, possessing a security clearance, may face potential repercussions. I hope this serves as motivation for middle Bill to promptly cover the damages himself. 4. Tyler, the caretaker, possesses a fascinating history. I was aware that he had friendships with several of the deputies, assuming it was due to their shared local roots. It turns out I was mistaken. He had served as a police officer in a major city for many years. After being shot while on duty, he chose to resign and relocate to the area where his parents had settled in retirement. He carries some lingering trauma from the experience. His dog is a recognized service animal and typically accompanies him. It seems that those in law enforcement often form close-knit circles, which likely explains how they became his friends. 5. I have no desire to encounter or converse with these individuals ever again. I recognize that this stands in stark opposition to my strong desire to bring them as much discomfort as I can. Insightful observation. Many individuals have suggested that I should have taken a firmer stance on this matter from the very beginning. I've steered clear of it to spare my parents the stress, as I truly dislike this kind of drama. But honestly, they're already stressed out now. My wife has largely distanced herself from this matter, expressing a desire to not hear about it for some time and indicating that the responsibility now rests with me. She'll pull back on that, but I suspect she won't engage from here on out, aside from being there to hear me vent. In my opinion, the reason for their break-in seems to be tied to intentions of utilizing the space for family getaways or possibly renting it out once more. Tyler, the property manager, mentioned that deer season runs until the end of the year. The Bills have previously utilized it as a base camp for extensive group hunting excursions. It accommodates numerous guests, so a single gathering with friends could yield them a substantial profit. Once more, I find myself speculating, but this could clarify their motive for breaking into the barn. A few years ago, I purchased a 6-seater mule, and they would likely want to utilize that. I believe they didn't intend to ruin the place. It holds significant value for my dad. And they both have a great deal of affection for him. Post update 6. December 2nd, 2023. 5 days later, Saturday, December 2nd, 2023. I didn't expect to be writing another post so soon. But a great deal has unfolded in the last couple of days. I believe we've reached a turning point with this situation. On Thursday afternoon, an envelope was delivered to my office by a courier. A signed letter from both my brothers-in-law accompanied a cashier's check for $5. In the letter, they expressed what I must say was a truly heartfelt apology. They admitted to breaking in, recognized that it was wrong, stated that the $5 was intended to cover the damage, and expressed willingness to pay more if the costs exceeded that amount. They also mentioned they would refrain from visiting the vacation home unless my wife and I extended a specific invitation. They requested that I do everything in my power to have the charges dismissed promptly. As both of them risked losing their jobs, they were willing to accept a restraining order or any other measures necessary to achieve that outcome. There was additional information too, all aimed at fostering harmony. But that captures the essence of it. This was nothing short of a profound surprise. It was, without a doubt, a complete reversal from their previous actions. I had already scheduled a meeting with a lawyer to discuss the possibility of taking legal action regarding my bills and to explore obtaining a restraining order. I reached out to him and shared the news I had just received. And he consented to meet with me at the end of the day rather than waiting until next week. instructed me against depositing the check. Our meeting lasted approximately 2 hours. He ultimately suggested that the wife and I proceed with a settlement and mutual release agreement involving all four of them, the sisters and the bills. He mentioned that pursuing them through a lawsuit would likely lead to a victory, but cautioned that the process could extend over 2 years or longer. He pointed out the significant initial legal costs involved and the possibility that we might not recover any funds at all. He mentioned that we could retain the $5 without any strings attached, even if we chose not to release them from their obligations. He is currently drafting the agreement, and it will not be ready until Monday. The agreement will encompass what is fundamentally the civil counterpart of a restraining order. I had previously requested my property manager to prepare a bid for the necessary repairs to the damage. After the meeting, I reached out to him and requested that he provide me with the closest estimate possible as soon as he could. He believes it will cost approximately $4 to resolve all the issues by Fr. Willowy. The majority of that is intended for the front entrance. On Fr. Willowy, my attorney reached out to each of the bill representatives, outlined our proposal, and recommended that they seek legal counsel of their own. Both parties reached a consensus on the matter. The middle bill informed him that they could either cover the damages or hire a lawyer, but not both. They concluded that hiring a lawyer would be futile, as they truly had no defense for their actions. His primary worry was whether the charges could be dismissed. It seems they are prepared to go to any lengths to endorse anything, just to put an end to this situation. My attorney reached out to the DA's office on Fr. Willowy to talk about the possibility of dismissing the charges. They obtained the name of the prosecutor and left a message, but have not had a conversation with them yet. He believes the charges will be dropped since the bills are being settled and there are no previous offenses. But then again, he's not an expert in criminal law. It was also mentioned that I should be ready to make the drive up there on Monday or Tuesday to personally inform the prosecutor that I wish for everything to be dismissed. He has also suggested that I maintain no contact with my sisters and bills, particularly for the next 6 months. It will be crucial to adhere to the terms of the agreement regarding any future interactions with them. It seems that the shift in the bill's stance is likely a result of their realization of the stakes involved, particularly the potential costs in legal fees and fines that they may incur. There exists a rather improbable chance that they might face incarceration for as long as 120 days. And as I previously noted, one of them holds a security clearance for his employment, which could be jeopardized. This represents their last-ditch effort to maintain their ordinary existence. This may not be an ideal solution to the predicament, but it will at least help me navigate through the legal and financial chaos I've been entangled in for the past few months. I have my doubts about ever achieving a civil relationship with any of them again. And that's perfectly acceptable. At this moment, my greatest desire is to put an end to this, move forward with my life, and never engage with any of them again. I feel utterly drained by this situation. My spouse shares a similar sentiment. Receiving the written apology was, oddly enough, a significant moment for me. I never anticipated that, but it seems to hold significant importance for me. The significance of money seems to fade into the background right now. I will certainly accept it. Without a doubt, I'm quite convinced that my middle sister and her husband managed to gather the funds. The cashier's check originates from the credit union associated with his employer. Once everything is finalized, I intend to provide one last update, likely just a revision to this post. I apologize for my overly meticulous nature. Crafting these posts has provided clarity for my thoughts, and the responses I've received have been incredibly beneficial. I genuinely value all the feedback, perspectives, and encouragement I've received. I sincerely wish that none of you ever have to endure such absurdity. To be honest, when I finally returned home Thursday night, tears of relief streamed down my face as I contemplated the possibility that this might all be coming to an end. I won't be bringing up the settlement with my family until it's officially signed by all parties involved. My sisters can handle their own bills if they choose, but I won't be involved. It's a matter strictly between us. Final update, December 7, 2023. 5 days later, on Tuesday morning, I had a meeting with my attorney to discuss the agreement. I made a few small adjustments, and he forwarded it to my siblings and their spouses. It stipulated that they cover my attorney's fee, which amounts to approximately $3. They expressed their dissatisfaction and attempted to negotiate. but he firmly stated that they could either accept the terms as they were or face the consequences of no deal. We would then move forward with legal action to recover the funds they received from renting the property. Compensation for wear and tear, repair expenses due to their break-in, emotional distress, lost income from the situation, attorney fees, and any additional costs we could claim. He also informed them that I would advocate strongly with the DA's office to pursue prosecution for every charge. In brief, they arrived and completed the signing. I was not present. I've heard it was quite a charged atmosphere, where the middle bill seemed to assert control. At one moment, he reportedly told both of my sisters to be quiet or he would abandon the entire situation, opting to negotiate solely with us while leaving the others behind. They issued another cashier's check for $2,500, asserting that this was all they possessed. It's sufficiently near that we will consider it as the conclusive payment. The attorney mentioned that the atmosphere was quite chilly, with everyone being rather abrupt with one another. Nevertheless, they all managed to maintain composure long enough to finalize the signing and departed without causing too much of a stir. I arrived at the vacation house early yesterday to assess the damage and consult with the DA's office. The sight of the destruction ignited a fierce anger within me. It felt utterly pointless. I was incredibly frustrated, feeling as though I might just absorb the repair costs and take every possible action to make their lives miserable. Attempted to walk it off, but it was a complete failure. I found myself reaching out to a dear friend who generously stayed on the line for more than an hour, allowing me to express my thoughts and frustrations freely. He ultimately redirected my attention to the broader perspective of moving past this and continuing with my life. Honestly, I'm still uncertain about my direction, but I took a moment to ground myself with some food, and it made a difference. After lunch, I made my way to the DA's office. I didn't have an appointment, so I had to wait for a bit, but I finally got the chance to meet with the assistant DA handling the case. The concise summary is that, since I prefer not to pursue prosecution and the bills have already covered the damages, they are prepared to dismiss all charges except for trespassing, which will be classified as a Class 2 misdemeanor in this instance. The bills must accept responsibility and settle any penalties determined by the judge. I've heard that if they contest the trespassing charge or even make the slightest disturbance in public, the consequences could be quite severe for them. The fact that the bills complied made a difference. Had they not, none of the charges would have been dismissed. I took a moment to visit the sheriff's office to express my gratitude for their prompt response and all their efforts. I intended to express my gratitude to the deputies directly, but I only had the opportunity to speak with the dispatch representative. I attempted to connect with Tyler, the property manager, but was unable to reach him. Just a quick note: the agreement contains a no-contact clause. Essentially, if any of them appear where my wife or I happen to be, or vice versa, the one who arrived last must depart without delay. All communication must be conducted solely through legal representatives or other mutually accepted intermediaries. They can retain all earnings from renting the vacation house, which is my significant contribution, unless I face tax implications for which they will be accountable. We hereby absolve one another from any and all obligations up to this moment. While there are additional aspects to consider, those are the key points. My spouse and I will finalize the agreement later today. Following that, I find myself unable to discuss much of this directly, but I can certainly navigate the surrounding topics. This should be my last update on this matter, but I will engage with comments if possible. Sharing my experiences and engaging with others' thoughts and responses has proven to be incredibly beneficial, playing a crucial role in my ability to navigate this situation in a relatively healthy manner. Once more, my heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you. Insightful observations. I struggled to suppress my vindictive feelings, but in this moment, I feel a sense of relief that I chose not to act on them. Should they stir up more drama in the future, I might find myself regretting it. However, if they adhere to the agreement, that scenario is unlikely to unfold. The family dynamics are, as you mentioned, quite troubled. I've shared with my parents that we're making an effort to resolve things, but that's the extent of it. They might have mixed feelings about how things will progress, but I had to prioritize what was best for my wife and me. I suspect my sisters have shared a rather biased account, and now I have yet another obstacle to navigate. The agreement essentially serves as a formal acknowledgement of the way things have been unfolding over the past few months. I'm aware that this isn't the path my parents envisioned, but I find contentment in it. Have your sisters ever displayed this kind of entitlement in the past? Not quite. Not directed at me. At least, we were once fine. Not particularly close, but certainly not adversaries. In retrospect, it seems they began to harbor resentment towards me after I purchased a loft at the age of 25. At that moment, neither of them possessed a home. Yet both had encountered the men they would eventually marry. They certainly weren't pleased that someone secured a spot ahead of them. Things took a turn for the worse when I met my wife. They disapproved of her association with a wealthy family, particularly because I had been doing quite well on my own by that time. Charged me with being elitist and similar accusations. After we tied the knot, I relocated to my wife's condo, conveniently situated near her fellowship, and I sold my loft. Our wedding was elegant yet sensible, though the sisters were certainly envious of it. Following that, they and their spouses became rather trivial, prompting us to reduce our engagement with them. The proceeds from the loft sale, along with my frugality and the absence of a mortgage, allowed me to purchase the vacation home for my parents. My parents were fine with concealing the truth about my ownership because they understood that my sisters would be unpleasant and claim I was relying on my wife's finances. I didn't. Most of our finances are kept separate. It certainly made a difference that I didn't have a house payment. Until this situation arose, I genuinely believed we were doing fine overall. Our daily lives were, and still are, quite different, and I can't pretend to enjoy being around them for more than half a day. However, I never thought they hated me. I was aware that both sisters had become rather spoiled and entitled. But that wasn't my concern. I found myself lacking any significant conflicts with my brothers-in-law, rather. It was more about the stark absence of common ground. In a way, I suppose that's a roundabout way of admitting I was oblivious to their true natures. Just one final reflection. At this moment, my modest wish is to never hear from them again.